Hello, my name is Gabriella Kuse, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today on behalf of the Global Digital Asset and Cryptocurrency Association here at the Building Better Worlds Conference. To give a bit of an introduction to who we are, the Global DCA is a global self-regulatory association. We have 60 member firms from the entire breadth of the crypto and digital asset ecosystem. This includes things like ATMs for Bitcoin, cryptocurrency exchanges, banking institutions, proprietary traders, and others, all gathered together with a common purpose to help steward responsible innovation and to help ensure that we are truly building a better world. So before I go into a little bit about what we're doing at the Global DCA, I wanted to step back for just a second and talk a bit about what we're seeing from the side of the global digital asset and cryptocurrency market. It's important to note that we're part of a very significant and growing marketplace. And global cryptocurrency market cap, it fluctuates, but generally it's steady around $2 to $3 trillion. So just to put this in perspective, the pace of market growth in 2019 was only about $237 billion. So we're seeing excellent growth, worldwide adoption, at this point up to 880%, with peer-to-peer platforms really driving that usage. It's also very global. This is not an asset class or a technology or financial technology that is, native or only confined to a specific region, country, or sub-region. But rather, we're seeing its growth around the world, in Asia, in Africa, in North America, and Latin America and Caribbean. And we'll go into a little bit about how and in what way different regions are applying, utilizing the technology, and trying to solve some of the day-to-day challenges that they face economically, financially, and socially. Digital assets are also a job creator. Close to a quarter of crypto asset firms have sustained an annual growth rate in employment above 10%. And we recognize that this is an excellent opportunity for domestic industry development, for job growth, and economic development. And in recognition of this, you're seeing countries all over the world seeking to position with legal and regulatory frameworks that are both enabling, but also help to foment responsible innovation that balances the needs for development of the industry with consumer protections. And that carries with it an ethos in an era of environmental social governance responsibilities and an opportunity to ensure that there is adequate digital equity and opportunity for all. There's a number of different reports that are out there globally that go into depth and provide insight and perspective as to how and in what way digital assets and cryptocurrencies are being used. But it's important to recognize that some of that differs to a certain degree region by region. In countries or regions where there may be a high degree of remittances, there's a strong need for money transmission across borders. And so that tends to facilitate or to activate a lot of the usage in those countries and regions. In other countries, we're seeing a very strong buy and hold strategy, so a more traditional financial application and utilization of the technology and financial opportunity that accompanies. In others, we may see an importance around facilitating refugee access to finance and being able to leave safely their country conditions and be able to withhold some of their wealth as they transition to a new life in another country. So depending on where you are in the world and how and in what way this technology may help enable you, you may be using it for different purposes. But in the same form, blockchain technology, facilitating digital assets and cryptocurrency, and allowing individuals economic freedom and opportunity to build their lives better. So what are some basic thoughts that we're seeing on regulation? At this point, we see that around the world, many countries are grappling with how and in what way to regulate the digital asset space. And they are looking at both peer country examples, as well as looking to international organizations to provide insight and guidance. What we see is that I think in the first instance, you're seeing a lot of jurisdictional approaches that seek to try and shoehorn in some of the digital assets into traditional legal or regulatory frameworks. However, I think over time, and I think even at this point, you're seeing jurisdictions understand that there is a need to reflect and consider how and in what way you would regulate something that is inherently decentralized and that requires a high degree of nimbleness and flexibility in order to meet and match some of the evolution of the space. As I said, we're still seeing a lot of regulations nationally bound. So similar to traditional finance, looking at what can be controlled within a given border of a country or a jurisdiction. But as digital assets are inherently cross-border and they go over borders so seamlessly, there's also an understanding that there needs to be a greater degree of harmonization, cooperation, and communication in regards to how and in what way regulation can take place, and also just key emerging trends, opportunities, and challenges that are being seen in the space. Today, here in the United States, as well as around the world, we're seeing, still a high degree of complexity and ambiguity with regards to digital asset regulation. However, there are some jurisdictions that have taken a very forward or progressive stance. So looking at countries like Switzerland or Japan that have already created a bit of a framework and are advancing, in particular, from the side of the global DCA, we seek to act as a center of excellence in providing input and industry perspective, not only towards regulators and legislators, but also more generally to policymakers and broader stakeholders and the general public. Our focus is really to work in partnership in a complementary style, so as to embrace technology and innovation while also protecting consumers and the public interest. In looking at the ways in which this asset class and industry can be regulated, it becomes very visible that there is, again, a high degree of evolution, a speed with which the evolution is taking place, and then a required degree of expertise and knowledge that in some ways necessitates a high level of nearness to that industry. And so when looking at how and in what way you would actually create the regulatory coverage that could effectively protect consumers, you begin to understand how and in what way a self-regulatory mechanism may be best suited to provide that level of support. In this instance, you might see that self-regulation could allow for a much more responsive and nimble approach, which would allow the evolution of the regulatory framework to keep in step with technological evolution. You could also see the fact that a self-regulatory mechanism would allow for greater cross-border engagement, cooperation amongst various regulators, civil society organizations, and others across borders, so that you have a bit more of a principles-based framework through which you could begin to carve out and define at a national or jurisdictional level how and in what way you would regulate. And also, improved clarity helps to reduce cost. By providing clear standards and benchmarks, you're able to enhance service delivery. And self-regulation helps to ensure that those individuals and companies that are coming to market with new products have the clarity they need to understand and obtain comfort that the investment in those services and products will be protected. Finally, we see the opportunities for enhanced medium, small, and micro business job creation. In this respect, we know that 80 to 90% of businesses around the world contribute at the small and medium enterprise level to job creation and economic growth. And since these are the engines of economic growth, offering clarity with regards to legal and regulatory frameworks for the industry helps to ensure that small and medium businesses have the understanding they need in order to grow, prosper, and help to contribute to national economic success. As I mentioned, the global DCA, our focus is very heavily on these core areas. And as a first instance, we look at standards and conduct. So ensuring that we're either lending our voice to global standard setting bodies so that they're able to have the inputs and research they need in order to create principles-based standards that are globally applicable. Supporting education and certification, so creating conferences, participating in events like today's, and helping just to ensure that we are all having access to the information we need regarding how and in what way the industry is developing and how we can all best prepare ourselves for an equitable and inclusive digital future. And then finally, working to advance legal and regulatory framework clarity here at home, as well as around the world through 15 memorandums of understanding with various nationally owned, demand-driven movements for self-regulation. In this way, we help to ensure and share resources across borders, in particular in those countries that are emerging or still in early levels of. I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to learn a little bit more about the Global Digital Asset and Cryptocurrency Association. And I invite you to join us. We're happy and always accepting members and looking for other like-minded firms willing to contribute and help shape a responsible future for the digital asset industry. Thank you very much.